Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Irma and Emilio Nicolas Media Center. I'm Ashley Alvarado, President and CEO of Texas Public Radio. Whether you're joining us in the room or tuning in online, I'm so grateful that you are sharing your evening with us. Before we dive in, I want to lift up the vital work of the Mexican American Civil Rights Institute. At TPR, we believe deeply in community-centered storytelling, and MACRI embodies that by preserving the stories, struggles, and profound achievements that shape our shared history. Their dedication to education and cultural preservation makes meaningful conversations like tonight's possible. So now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce tonight's MC, Elaine Ayala. As the host, yes. As the host of the Buena Vista Project podcast, Elaine explores Mexican-American history, politics, cultura, y más, through the kind of rich storytelling that we champion. So please join me in giving Elaine a nice, additional, very warm welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and bienvenidos to the Mexican American Civil Rights Institute's 2026 Symposium, coming to you from San Antonio, the Mexican American capital of the United States. If you'd like to dispute that, I'm ready for you. Thank you for joining us in person and from your laptops and cell phones across the country via streaming services. Tonight, we gather to reflect on the past, to confront the challenges of the present, and to imagine a stronger, more inclusive future for our communities. This symposium brings together leaders, scholars, advocates, and changemakers committed to advancing civil rights, preserving history, and amplifying the voices that continue to shape the Mexican-American experience in Texas and throughout the country. San Antonio has long stood at the center of these conversations, a city where culture, activism, public service, and community have helped define the broader American story, and tonight's dialogue continues in that tradition. To help us open this important evening, it's my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Gina Ortiz Jones, Mayor of San Antonio. We'll give her another round of applause when I'm over. A first-generation American, Jones is the 69th mayor of our city. She's a graduate of Boston University, the University of Kansas, and the U.S. Army School of Advanced Military Studies. She served as an intelligence officer in the U.S. Air Force, is a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom, and joined the Defense Intelligence Agency as an inaugural member of the U.S. African Command. In 2021, President Joe Biden nominated and the U.S. Senate unanimously confirmed her as the 27th Undersecretary of the Air Force. Please welcome our Mayor, Gina Ortiz Jones.
All right, good evening, everybody. It's truly my honor to be with you, to welcome you to the 7th Annual Mexican American Civil Rights Institute Symposium, the only national history museum dedicated to preserving and sharing Mexican American civil rights history. And this museum is certainly a crown jewel for our city. Absolutely. I certainly appreciate the work that MACRI does year-round, ensuring folks understand Mexican-American civil rights history, but I'm especially thankful for the symposium's focus on what this means for contemporary civil rights issues facing Mexican-Americans and our nation. Just this morning, in fact, I spoke to a group of young people, young students that were in town for the 97th annual LULAC convention. And one of the kids asked several good questions, and the first one asked, had I experienced any opposition from the state? And I thought to myself, like this morning, or like... Her second question, though, was, what is your advice for voters that feel discouraged? And I had to think about that. The latter question in particular, though, highlighted why MACRI's work is so important. I answered that question simply, right? Vote anyways. Things will not get better if you pay less attention, if you participate less. But I think there's also a MACRI answer to that, which is important for our young people to understand. So I took the time to explain the long history of the work accomplished over the years to, in fact, discourage and disenfranchise voters, which is why our efforts last winter to move the municipal election from May to November were so important. To understand the history of why municipal elections are even in May, with the very deliberate and intended impact to minimize the impact of the Mexican-American electorate on critical municipal issues, is not insignificant, and something all of those young people needed to appreciate. Having successfully moved the municipal elections from May to November, we're further leaning into ways to increase voter access and voter awareness. The Mayor's Voting Commission I recently established with representatives from all across 10 districts are charged with identifying steps we can take at the local level to increase voter access and voter awareness. We are not helpless at the local level, so I look forward to receiving those recommendations as we approach July 4th, so we may implement them before November. As the home of the first Mexican-American Chamber of Commerce, the home of the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Education Fund, the home of the Edgewood Walkout, and yet, the third poorest major city in the country, San Antonio desperately needs MACRI's leadership and voice in this moment in time. At a time when federal and state actions are making it harder for people to vote, harder for Mexican-American kids to know themselves and thus be proud of their history, the imperative to celebrate, support, and uplift organizations like MACRI could not be more urgent. I am especially heartened by MACRI's vision. MACRI envisions communities where all Americans are inspired by the Mexican-American civil rights legacy and see themselves as participants and transformational leaders in advancing democracy for all. I certainly feel that. Above my computer monitor in my office, I have a picture of me with Dolores Huerta the morning at Blanco Cafe right before we worked to change the voting ordinance to move the date of the municipal elections. And on my desk to the left, I have a small picture of Specialist Vanessa Guillen. Both remind me of the shoulders upon which this LGBTQ Filipino American stands, as well as the very real work that remains to ensure we are living up to our highest ideals as a nation and achieving that more perfect union each day. Shortly, we'll celebrate our nation's 250th birthday, with many of us in this room recognizing that that Independence Day didn't necessarily have us in mind. But thanks to organizations like MACRI, the contributions of Mexican Americans to the civil rights history of this country will be enshrined for the next 250 years. Thank you again for taking the time to support MACRI this evening, and I wish each of you a successful symposium. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. You'll hear from MACRI Executive Director, Dr. Sarah Zenaida Gould, later this evening. But she's here running the show. She's responsible for all of this. She's here behind the scenes. Thank you, Sarah. She asks me to remind you that the views and ideas shared by presenters do not necessarily reflect those of MACRI or Texas Public Radio, their staff, or their funders. Also, if you mention MACRI or the symposium on social media tonight or tomorrow, please add @SomosMACRI or hashtag SomosMACRI 2026 to your post. Finally, for those in the theater, don't forget to silence your phones. Thank you in advance for that. Okay, here's the show, the big show. We don't often hold fireside chats in San Antonio. It's already too hot. But tonight's speakers indeed bring the heat. In their respective fields, they never shy away from the difficult, critical issues the nation faces, and they've become national figures for civil rights movements of Mexican Americans, U.S. Latinos, and U.S. immigrant communities. Congressman Joaquin Castro of San Antonio has represented Texas's 20th congressional district in the U.S. House of Representatives since 2013. A native of the city's west side, he's the highest-ranking Democrat in the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on the Western Hemisphere and sits on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. He's become a prominent advocate on human rights, immigration reform, foreign policy, and military families. He served as an impeachment manager during the 2021 impeachment proceedings against Donald Trump. My pause was intentional. A graduate of Stanford and Harvard Universities, he's the grandson of Victoria Castro, an immigrant from Mexico, and the twin son of one of San Antonio's most beloved grassroots activists, and she's here with us tonight. Please welcome Rosie Castro, who's sitting up front. Please welcome Congressman Castro. Go take your seat. And usually, I always say this when I have to introduce him, and that's he is the more handsome of the two. I really mean it.
Thank you, Elaine.
Entertainer Cristela Alonso may live in California now, but she's puro RGV. A proud native of San Juan, Texas, Alonso is a comedian, writer, actor, producer who made television history as the first Latina to create, write, produce, and star in her own primetime network sitcom, Cristela. She's become widely recognized for her sharp humor, her deeply personal storytelling, and commentary on culture, family, and identity. Her work spans stand-up, television, and film, including her role as the voice of Cruz Ramirez in Pixar's Cars 3. She has released acclaimed comedy specials, you know them, lower classy, middle classy, high classy. She's appeared on major late-night programs and built a national following through humor, both insight and relatable. In 2019, she published a best-selling memoir called Music to My Ears. Please join MACRI in giving a big San Antonio welcome to Cristela Alonso.
Welcome, welcome.
What's up?
Well, first, thank you, Elaine. Thank you to TPR for hosting us, to MACRI for putting on this amazing symposium, and also to everybody who's joining us tonight. And Cristela, welcome back to San Antonio.
I know.
She sold out like 3 shows,
At the Empire
shows.
Theater, yeah.
Yeah, like a month ago or so. So
I was here the night that the Spurs won Game 3 in the last series. So I'm just saying, you're welcome.
she went honking with everyone.
Oh my God, who's got honking money in this economy. People were driving downtown on purpose honking. I'm like, man, you guys gotta love those Spurs.
Were you able to go to sleep? Were you staying downtown and were you able to go to sleep and all the honking?
No, it never stopped. It went on all night. I'm like, I get it, you won. Like it was like 3 a.m. and I'm like, the bars are closed. And, like, oh my God. I'm like, it wasn't even the championship. It was game 3. It's like,
We didn't used to do that for like every game, right? It seems like it changed. Like, anyway, we could spend the whole hour talking about. But welcome back, and MACRI has done a lot of incredible work on Mexican American civil rights and the history of that struggle and its importance. And it's more important now than ever because you see this anti-DI backlash, stories being erased from textbooks. All of this attack on Latino history, African American history, and the history of others. And when people think of Latinos, oftentimes Latinos are stereotyped.
Yes.
And regions of the country are stereotyped. And you grew up in one of the places where when Americans hear about the U.S.-Mexico border, they often have strong images about what that means. And you grew up literally like on the town right at the border. I think you were born in Hidalgo, is that right?
no, I was born in San Juan, but like now you can walk into Mexico from San Juan. Like there's a bridge there now. I don't want to brag, but like we're doing pretty good.
And now you've ended up in Hollywood, obviously, and
Yes.
A very successful stand-up comedian, doing voiceover work. You had the first television series for a Latina, right?
Yes.
Mexican American, about just over a dozen years ago.
Yeah.
But tell us, you grew up right there on the border. What is the difference between what people perceive and what you actually knew growing up there?
What's funny is that growing up in the Valley, I always thought I was Mexican because everyone in my neighborhood was Mexican, from Mexico. And I never knew, like, I didn't even think about being American or Mexican as a kid because you were just you. And it wasn't until I left Texas that I was told that I was not Mexican or American. And that was weird because then what was I? Right? So.
And y'all grew up speaking Spanish? You said both your parents were from Mexico.
Yeah. So like they never learned English. So sometimes when I speak Spanish, people on the internet, because they're so nice, like when I speak Spanish, they're all like, you don't speak Spanish. I'm like, well, my mom really pretended because like she understood everything I said, So, I spoke Spanish. I learned English from watching TV. Like, My grandma used to live in Reynosa, Tamaulipas, so we used to go visit her like every Monday because that was my mom's day off from cooking at a restaurant that she worked at. And in the summers, I would spend my summers in Mexico, and I would watch these TV shows that I didn't know were American, that I thought were Mexican. So like I thought Knight Rider was Mexican.
With a Spanish dub?
Yeah, it's like, Keith, ven acá, Keith. And it's like, oh my God, Like I thought 1960s Batman was Mexican because so it was kind of crazy because I realized, I'm like, oh no. But the thing is that it didn't matter. It really didn't matter. It just kind of made you who you were. And what I realized once I left Texas, especially when I went to Los Angeles, I realized that everybody wanted to put you in a box the moment you got there because putting you in a box and classifying you means that now they know what to do with you. And if you refuse to get in that box, then they're confused and they don't know where to go. And it's that thing where, and I say this a lot, especially when I do shows in San Antonio, is that when I tell people that I'm from South Texas, everybody thinks it's San Antonio. Like everybody.
We own South Texas.
Yeah, for real. Everybody.
We are South Texas.
Everybody. Like I remember, even years ago politically, when the child separations were starting, people would talk about child separations in San Antonio, and I'm like, at HEB, we are like 4 hours south. It's like it's a whole other that is 4 hours of driving. It's Falfurrias. If you know Falfurrias, you're South Texas. You know what I mean? So it was. it's one of those things, it's one of the reasons why I always like to talk about being from the Rio Grande Valley, because I want people to know that I'm from the Rio Grande Valley, and I want people to know that we are there.
And, you know, you have spoken, you've talked about, in a humorous way, about growing up poor.
Yeah.
And living in an abandoned restaurant for many years with your mom.
The first 7 years of my life, we were homeless. We were squatters.
And so, Cristela, how does somebody, you were a theater kid, right? Like, how
Big
does
theater
somebody, how do you go from being there in the Rio Grande Valley and the experience that you had, how do you go to the success that you've had? Because somebody looking at it ahead of time would say that the chances of that happening for folks are very small. How do you do it?
So, my high school, I was a big theater nerd, and my high school teachers never taught us that we couldn't, they taught us that we could do anything. They never gave us limits. My freshman year, my high school did The Diary of Anne Frank, all Mexicans, right? And like,
Y'all were doing like a Hamilton style thing before.
Totally.
Before,
Totally. I mean, ridiculous. We just had a bunch of little Mexicans going around like, she's in the attic, like, you know, like, it's like ridiculous. Like, and like we didn't think anything wrong. We didn't think anything of it because we were doing theater, you know? And then when I graduated high school, I went to college, and my freshman year, my voice teacher said, as a Latina, my dream was to be on Broadway. And my voice teacher said, as a Latina, you could do West Side Story and you can do Chorus Line, and that's it. And it was right at the time where rent was blowing up. And it was so weird because I thought, but I'm 18. Like, how do I peak so early? What do I do after I'm done with my dream? And they're like, I don't know, figure it out. And I ended up doing like West Side Story, and I ended up doing Chorus Line. And then I thought, oh, I'm done. And I really was done, because back then, you know, the plays, all the women had to look alike. If you cast a white person, all the sisters had to be white, and that was limiting. And after a while, I told myself, and this is, you know, life stuff, I ended up having to drop out of college. I moved home. I was taking care of my mom. I was my mom's caretaker. Then I had to take care of my sister's kids, because now another thing is that I was a theater major, so everyone in my family didn't think that I had a real life. You know what I mean? Like, my dream.
So they wanted you to do everything.
Yeah, you know, and then when I dropped out of college, everybody, like, I started taking care of my sister's kids, because everyone in my family was like, well, you dropped out. Like, your life is done. And I was like, no. I dropped out because you made me. You know, because, like, I'm childless and I'm not married. And people always say, like, the argument is like, well, why don't you have children? I'm like, because I already raised other people's children, you know? And like that, a lot of times, for a lot of people, that's the thing. So after my mom passed away, the first thing I thought was, well, now nothing can hold me. Like, I was always on her beck and call. I would always drop everything for my mom. And I started writing about her because I was so depressed about her. And I didn't know what to do with my life, and then I got a DUI because I was mourning her, and I drank too much one night, and I got probation for 2 years, and I'm like, well, damn, now I'm stuck in Texas for 2 more years before I go live my dream. And I started writing stand-up because I told myself that if I was gonna have a chance, I was gonna have to write it and create it myself, because nobody was gonna do it for me. Nobody was gonna do it for me, and that's what I did.
And that became Cristela.
Yeah, that became Cristela. And it's funny because when I got to LA, when I got to LA, everybody told me, you're fat and you have a crooked tooth. And I was like, well, hello to you too. And like, they're so good at telling you, like, you're not gonna be on TV. Like, look at you, you're plus size and you have a crooked tooth. Like, you're not. And I was like, okay, so I'm just gonna go on tour. And then I never even wanted a TV show because they told me I wasn't going to get one. So I started touring. And I started doing college gigs. And I remember, and I've told you this story before, I think. It was 2012, and you and your brother were doing the DNC. I was on the road, and I was doing a college gig in Providence, Rhode Island. And the flight landed late due to a technical difficulty, and I had to cancel the gig. So I stayed in the hotel room, and I saw both of you at the DNC, and I was like, pardon my French, who the fuck are these guys? Like, because I was like, what, like they're Castro.
Well, my brother is nobody, but you know.
I'm like, who's that guy and who's this other better looking one?
Exactly.
But it really, you know, it was, I was so excited to see you guys. I remember I called my best friend and I was like, these two guys, first of all, they're Latino, they're twins, and they're from San Antonio. Why don't I know them? And it was that thing where I realized, like, to me, it stood out that I didn't know you because you were so rare. Like, because you stood out, and it bothered me that I didn't know who you were. It bothered me because I'm like, it should be, like, look, no offense, but I watch like maybe, I would say like 9 hours of news every day. I love the news. But like white person after white person, you're like, oh, you're so-and-so from like Iowa, blah, blah, blah. And then like lately they'll throw in a Rocana every now and then, you know? It's like, but it's like, we need the diversity. It's important to have people represented so that other people can see that it's possible, you know?
And we've since talked about that, the fact that there is this real issue of the lack of Latino representation in media and entertainment. And, you know, I started doing that work, as you remember, after a lot of it, after what happened in El Paso, where there's a guy that drove 10 hours from Dallas, went to El Paso and killed more than 20 people and injured more than 20 others, who said, and it always stuck with me, he said the reason he did it, I think he wrote that kind of manifesto, was because he considered these people, quote unquote, Hispanic invaders to Texas. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, how does somebody end up with that idea, right? And I mean, you know, I don't think there's a singular factor, but I think one of the reasons is over the years, through Hollywood, through hard news, through mass media, Latinos and Latinas have been stereotyped. First of all, our contributions have not been celebrated, right?
No.
You know, so in science, in business, in government. And so when you're not defined by your contributions, then you tend to be defined by somebody else, by the stereotypes.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, if I'm in DC and I talk to somebody about the border or South Texas, right away they think violence and drugs and danger. And that's why I opened up with that question, you know, what life was really like. Not that there wasn't any of that, but what the people and the humanity and the stories and the achievement of the Mexican American community in the Valley and in San Antonio and other places.
To me, I think that there's a couple things that I want to say. It's like, I think that we actually have to own what country we come from as Latinos, because it's not a monolith. So I always like to tell people that my family's from Mexico, because a lot of times on TV, especially in the past 10 years, you see a lot of Latino representation that's focused a lot on Florida. So it's a lot of Puerto Rican, a lot of Dominican, a lot of Puerto Rican, you know, whatever. So, and they think that we're all the same, and we're not. You know, and it's important. And I actually learned that from Dolores. Dolores Huerta years ago told me, you always have to be specific about talking about where you're from, where your family's from, because even though we're all seen as Latinos, we're all separate. We all have our different countries, and people that are from countries that are not mentioned, like Ecuador, Nicaragua, like, you know, there's so many countries that are not represented that I think it's important for us to actually tell people and be specific about it. It's important because, you know, a lot of times when I see TV shows, and I'm not saying that it's like everybody thinks that one Latino show represents everybody, right? So if it's a show in Miami, there's reggaeton playing, right? But like I grew up with a lot of polkas, right? I like a lot of rancheras, a lot of like, you know, the old classic like Pedro Infante, Antonio Aguilar, everything like that. And it's hard for me to explain to people. I'm like, well, there's a big German influence in a lot of the regional Mexico, like da-da-da. And everybody's like, German, but you're Mexican. And it's like, it turns out that people travel. you know?
And where are we in terms of representation now? You've been in Los Angeles and Hollywood for a while now. the politics of the nation has gotten very rough. Like I
Yes.
said, there's this whole anti-DEI movement. The numbers were not very good to begin with if you look at folks in the industry.
Yeah.
And not only acting and producing, directing, but also in terms of authors and so forth, people that are
Yes.
published, because you wrote a book as well. So, what's your assessment? Like, where are we now?
And like my book is actually a perfect example. My book came out in October of 2019, right? Like months before COVID. And it was around the time that Trump was firing so many people, and their consolation prize was to get a book deal. So I didn't get any promotion when my book came out because I wasn't sexy enough like Omarosa or like whatever. Like, like everybody had a book about how Trump was mean to them. And now if that was saying, I mean, look, we could all have a book right now, you know what I mean? But it was like this thing where like, it just showed you how there's always been this thinking that, for me, in my experience, Latinos don't need to be promoted because we all know each other and we will tell each other to watch and support what we do. But no, we need it. When I had my TV show, and I tell this story a lot, I didn't know what to expect. So when the show got picked up and we were going to go on the schedule, you had to do a marketing meeting with the network. It was ABC, and they were so proud because the head of marketing was Latina, and they were like, "You're welcome," right? And I go in, and they start pitching me all these ideas, and they're like, "We got it." The show posters, my face, and they photoshopped a quinceañera crown on top of me, and it had each little point of the crown had like a letter of my name, and it was something like the new reina of comedy, right? And I was like, oh my God, this is awful. Right? And they're like, no, but it's quinceañera and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm also in my 30s. Like, what am I doing? And they hated that I pushed back on it because they were like, my God, you should be grateful that we came up with this, right? And then they were like, okay, East LA, we're going to put talking bus benches. So we're going to put your face on these bus benches, and you're going to speak in
This was the
Spanish.
marketing part of the marketing,
like
yeah.
the network. And first of all, I'm like, why are we only doing it in East LA, right? But they were like, it's going to be your face. People are going to sit down waiting for the bus. And in Spanish, you're going to be like, hola, yo soy Cristal Alonso, quiero invitarles. And I'm just like, but my show's in English, right? And they're like, no, like they'll get it. And I was like, no. And even I came here, we met. There was a People in Espanol festival.
That's right,
That happened
yeah.
in 2014.
Yeah.
And I geeked out because it was 2 years after the DNC. And I'm like, finally, I'm going to corner this guy. And we took a picture, and I fought the network because I didn't want to come to that festival because it was in Spanish. And I told them, can you please spend that money on English marketing? And they were like, no, you speak Spanish. And I've always said, my show came out the year that Jane the Virgin came out. And what helped Gina was that Gina couldn't speak Spanish. So she was allowed to do all of her marketing in English. I spoke Spanish, so I had to do all of my marketing in Spanish because they thought that Spanish trumped English when it came to Latino marketing. So she got to do all of the English shows, and I would see what was possible because she was doing all the shows, and they would have me do Telemundo, Univision, Despierta America, and I'm just like, and I couldn't, and the thing is that there was a lack of trust where I would tell them, my show's on Friday nights at 8:30. That is the best night for a novela. So people that speak Spanish, they're not going to watch my show. They're watching the Friday episode of the novela because that's how my family grew up.
Yeah.
It's Monday is like the boring thing because nothing happens after the Friday episode. So it's Monday and Tuesday, we set it up. Wednesday's going to be like an interesting novela like episode. Thursday, it's like, no way they're going to do it. Friday, they're like, guess what? We're doing it. And and they didn't believe me. Like they didn't believe me. And it was just, so it's an uphill climb. And I think in the past 10 years, I would like to say that my show paved the way for other Latina-led shows, especially in the comedy world, and that wasn't done until that show. And now what I see is, I remember when my show was canceled, and they offered me the full-time gig on The View. They wanted me to host The View. And I didn't want to do it because I hated it. I loved the women, but I hated that after every episode, because I was guest hosting The View on my weeks off from the show because the network wasn't promoting my show. So I had to go host The View to get any kind of promotion. And I hated how every time the episode was done, I just had people just being so racist to me online, you know, because they didn't like what I was saying, blah, 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 blah. So I said no. And then ABC wanted to develop a new show for me. And then Trump won. And immediately ABC had sent out a press release and said that they were gonna try to focus on his crowd, which meant that I couldn't do a show anymore. So like they had brought in Tim Allen's Last Man Standing. It had been canceled,
and that was
then
Trump
they brought
1.
it back.
I mean, Trump 2
Yeah.
is like
So now it's
10
like,
times
yeah,
worse,
you know.
right?
So now, I mean, so now we're in a different point, you know. And people always ask me like, why don't you come back to TV? And I was like, because I don't think I'm ready. Because we need to, the timeline has to catch up to where we are now, right? So like right now, I'll say that like right now I closed a deal to develop a new show, right? Like just yesterday, right? And people say, well, what took you so long? I'm like, I wanted to have a chance because I think that he's been around so long now that now, especially in a midterm year, we're seeing that people are looking for other options. So it was I thought it was timing. The timing worked well for me to try to come back and see where we are now. But I didn't want to waste my time telling stories that I care about to not have it be taken seriously, because then why are we doing this? I'm not doing it for the money. You know, I mean, like honestly, it's like, I've always said, it's like growing up in poverty made me so powerful. You know, because what's the worst that can happen? I go back to being poor. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? People that have never been poor, man, they are scared of poverty. They are scared of it. But when you're poor, you're like, bring it. I'm used to it. I'm used to it all day.
And I'll ask you one more question, and then we'll open it up to the audience. And even since your show, like media and entertainment have changed a lot.
Yeah.
And are on the verge, perhaps, of changing more. You have a huge mega merger that's on the verge of happening, right? Between Paramount and Warner Brothers.
That's where my deal's at.
Which one? Paramount or Warner Brothers? They're
CBS.
both now. CBS, okay.
Yeah.
So what does it look like for folks who are trying to break in for Latino representation in that world, right? In a more consolidated
I think you have to be
ecosystem?
realistic. I think you have to be realistic and know that it's going to be hard. Depending on the kind of story you want to tell. You know, the biggest problem I've had is that a lot of times when I'm trying to explain a story or pitch a story, you're telling people that have never heard of it. So you have to teach them the culture and then pitch something about it. And if they don't get it, you're kind of screwed. But I do believe actually that the time that we live in right now, with everything happening, and, you know, it's important. I was having this talk the other day. When people are critical of, like, Trump, they'll say, like, history will not look kindly to Trump. I'm like, they don't even read history books. Like, you know what I mean? Like, history can treat them however they want. Nobody, if people were reading history books, we wouldn't have repeated what happened in the 40s,
So in 50 years, there'll be statues of him everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? Like he's like, oh man, I love that guy from Home Alone too. Like they'll remember him as something silly, right? But it's like that thing where, you know, the time that we live in now, when you see what's happening and you see the child separation from Trump 1, you know, the Muslim ban from Trump 1, now we're going into the detention centers, which you do a fantastic job of covering, and especially everything with Dilley, like everything. We need more of that, and you do it, and it shows how important it is. But because of that, you also see people seeing how many people are against it. And I think that that's one thing that we kind of forget a lot of times, because we always tend to go towards the loud ones, the ones that scream, the ones that yell. I always tell people, it's like, people always thought the Tea Party was huge years ago, but that's because everybody that was in the Tea Party was retired and had time to go rent costumes from Party City. Like, you know, like they all had time to like go dress up like Quaker Oats people or whatever. So everybody thought that the Tea Party was bigger than it was, and it dissolved right away, right? So where we are now, we need to, this is actually a really good time to not forget where we're from, to actually remember who we are. And I tell people all the time, like, unfortunately, the people that I grew up with, the community, have seen a lot of stuff and struggled a lot, which means that this isn't new to us. And we have beaten it, and we will again. And we just have to keep talking about it, and we have to be specific and tell our stories, because that's how we win. And we will win.
Absolutely.
We will win.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. We have about 15 minutes for questions, if y'all have some. I think there are microphones here.
Can I also give a quick shout out to Josefina Lopez, which is she's right here in the front row. She wrote Real Women Have Curves. But I told this story in 2014 when I had my show. The show had been picked up. I was screening the show. I saw her in the audience, and I noticed her because when I was in high school, I was a theater kid, and I used to read so many plays a week, always looking for Latina pieces. And I found Real Women Have Curves. My teacher used to always order any Latino scripts that they had. And my senior year in high school, we did a play called Unconquered Spirits, based on a story, one of your, La Llorona. And it was like, I played Xochimilco. And Xochitl, and I ended up getting a scholarship because of that play. So it's like,
And can I add that you were supposed to play the lead in Real Women Have Curves, the Broadway musical.
Yes.
Because you told me that was your dream.
That was my dream.
And then when the casting people said, oh, she's busy, she's on tour, I was like, what?
Yes,
Anyway,
yes. It was a timing, and it sucked because it was like, my dream is still to be on Broadway, and it came, and it was just like, it wasn't the right time.
That's like the next milestone.
Yeah, you know.
They're doing it at the Pasadena Playhouse. If you want to do it in April, May, okay?
Question? Please.
Hi, my name is May. Thank you both for being here. Soy tejana, soy indigenia, y también soy no sabo gringa. And with that, my question to you is, what do you see the future of millennials and maybe our children going forward in storytelling through language? Is that Spanish? Is that Spanglish? With your critique.
It's yourself. It's whatever yourself is, because honestly, everybody thinks, I think that people don't give themselves credit for knowing that your story really matters. I think that for the longest time we've been taught that our stories, like, and I suffer from it too. I always think, well, who am I? Who am I to do this? Who am I to say, like, I'm someone from the Valley. Like, you know, it's like, I'm first generation. I grew up really poor, and I don't know.
How do you overcome that? Like, how do you, because people have that kind of self-doubt, and when there aren't people who are trailblazers in front of them for them to readily see, I think it's harder. So how are you able to come out of that?
You know, you don't. I struggle with it. I struggle with it all the time. And honestly, to be honest with you, I think I'd be a lot further in my career if I had the confidence of, you know, a white guy that wants to run for office with no experience.
You would be president.
Well, and that was, you know, it makes me mad because, like, in fourth grade, my teacher, Mrs. Edwards, we did a yearbook. in 4th grade, and they asked us a questionnaire. They're like, what do you want to be when you want to grow up, when you're an adult? And I said, I want to be the first female president of the United States.
I love it.
Because I loved politics, because my mom couldn't speak English, so I would translate the news for her. So I would always translate the news. So I knew current events from from a very young age. And everyone, they read my yearbook and they're like, that's so dumb. Like, you're from San Juan. Like, you're never going to be president, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that was, and now I see these people and I'm like, dude, I could have been like a 5th term president. Rules don't even matter anymore. But you know, it is one of those things that you don't get over. You don't get over. I try to work on it, but it's hard. It's hard because I still question it, because I was also raised very, very traditional in a very Catholic household. So you were taught that women, you know, had to be submissive to men, you know, and you have to be modest and you have to be quiet and everything. So like now, you know, when I say a bad word, my brothers are like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, it pays your bills, stupid.
And your brothers tour with you, and they're in charge of the merchandise
Yeah,
sales.
my brothers sell the merch. My brothers sell my merch. They're like, one's a retired school teacher, the other one teaches high school soccer and stuff, and they sell my merch. And like I tell people all the time, we're becoming Selena y los Dinos. Like, they're just like family business.
Question.
Hi, my name is Yvette Theo. I am the publisher for La Prensa Texas, and I'm so glad to see you guys up here, both of you. I'm going to tell you, Mr. Castro, I know it can't be easy for you going to these detention centers, and I almost feel like you're fighting that fight by yourself sometimes. There's so many politicians that could be walking right next to you, and they don't. And kudos to you, because I'm sure there's some days you wake up pretty tired.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
And Cristela, I want to say to you, you know, when you say that it's tough that we're going to what you're going through, I think we were taught as Latinos, and we forget that our parents were taught, like my dad was taught, you don't speak up. It was assimilating.
Yeah.
We needed to assimilate. We needed to fit in. There are so many of us, but we don't use our voices. We don't unite. Instead, we criticize each other. We tear each other down for those that are trying to get up there and make a difference. And there is no right or wrong way. It's just using our voice. But well, now we've got keyboards and we've got cyber bullies, and you've got people that would, if you actually talk to them, they're actually, they don't say too much when you ask them, okay, like, why did you say that? And, oh, well, and they won't. But on that keyboard, boy, they can say some stuff. So I think what you were talking about being a president, my father was told, he was pulled up in front of the class. They made him introduce himself. He said, my parents are divorced, and my mom's a housewife. She went to Kennedy, Edgewood at the time, and he says, they said, Ralph, you're a good kid. Just make sure that you don't speak up. Just sit in the back of the classroom. Don't make any noise, and you'll be okay. And know this: there will never be a Mexican president.
Yeah.
That was in a classroom.
Yeah.
And that was a teacher. And so you're telling children these things. And my father was very different than my mother. My mother grew up in Stonewall, Texas. She had a very different life than my dad. So my mother was big on using the voice. She always talked about media. And she's like, you threaten them with the media. Threaten them with the media. That was before speed dial and our emails and all that good stuff. But the first time I did it, I was in 4th grade, and I loved it because it works, right? And so with my teachers. But it was a very different time. And when we say, like, the things that you're going through mentally and challenging, but it's also things that we went through, like we were taught these things, and it was generational. And it wasn't, my dad did it because, you know, you get in trouble, you get beat, you get put in juvenile, those kind of things that he didn't want my grandma to go through. So he would just say, I'm just going to stay out of trouble, not use my voice. You know, Ramsey Muñiz had this big movement. We were the sleeping giant, the Latinos. There's so many of us. Why is it that we're not doing what we're supposed to do? And I hear you up there talking, and you're like up against the grain, right? Because they make you do it in Spanish, even though, right, we're not going to pay you as much or give you as much or do those things. It's because it's already designed that way. You know, either you're not brown enough or you're too brown.
And honestly, you know, another thing, though, that we don't even talk about is the first generation people that have to come into their power because my parents were undocumented. And when they're undocumented, you're even quieter. than
That's right.
what you're taught out of protection and survival.
Absolutely.
So now you have to learn that you are born here and live a different life than your parents, and that's hard. I've tried to explain to people, it's like, my parents were undocumented. I grew up with this, and my mom raised me. She was undocumented, and I lived a very undocumented lifestyle because I was a child, So it's like, it's hard to come into your power when you were taught to be the smallest you can be so that
You don't bring no
you're safe.
Yeah, and here we are again, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Thank you both for being here. You guys are very inspirational and brave. And honestly, all the support that we can give you, we need to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Joaquin, really quick. How do you do it? How do you do it, like dealing with like the dilly with like like I see the videos and I see your posts and stuff, and like she brings up such a great point. Like I see it and I'm just like, how do you do it? Like what goes through your mind? Because even getting access and everything, like that seems like so impossible, and you keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, the members of Congress are basically the only people that can go in there. And that's why I've tried to go at least once a month, because if we don't go, then literally those places are like black sites where nobody knows what's going on. But it's been remarkable. This is my 24th year in public service. So I spent 10 years in the legislature. This is my 14th year in Congress. So, a while now. And so I've worked on a lot of different issues, but this is probably the one issue where even randomly, like I'll be at HEB and people will say, oh, thank you so much for what you're doing with the kids. And you can tell that the mistreatment of children and children in this imprisonment this way has really like struck a nerve with people in a way that I haven't seen with very many other issues, since I've been working in politics. And so we're going to do everything we can to shut Dilly down and to end family and child detention. Please.
Sure. So my name is Janie Gonzalez, so thank you for sharing your story with us. So one of the things the mayor left out, San Antonio is also the home of the first Mexican-American web technology company built on the west side of San Antonio. So I wanted to add that.
Janie's company.
With that being said, so what responsibility do we have as a community to support entrepreneurs who are creating quality jobs, investing in people, building businesses that prove we belong in industries such as tech or emerging tech, like we now have a quantum computing startup? We belong in industries where we haven't traditionally been represented.
First of all, I think step number one is making sure that we actually learn our history and our contributions. During COVID, when I found out that a Latina invented hand sanitizer, I used it on every MAGA person out there. Anytime I saw one of them, I'm like, hey, by the way, de nada. I find out certain specific things so that people understand that we've been around and we contribute. The beauty blender sponge for makeup, Latina, right? But we have to know our history. And it's hard because I remember, I was such a nerd in school that I read about Dolores Huerta when I was a kid in a chapter in a history book that they didn't teach at school. So I learned it on my own. And then when I saw her at one of my shows, I'm like, oh my God, you're Dolores Huerta. But that's because I was lucky enough to know my history. So, I think what's really important is actually, like, right now, the lesser attractive Castro brother, he does the Latino Community Foundation. Yeah. And one of the things that they do is create like seed programs for different like Latino businesses to help nurture and build them. But honestly, the community, we actually need to talk to each other about what we're doing, because that goes back to what we were saying about being small and like keeping it to ourselves. We actually have to tell ourselves what we're doing so that people know, because the moment somebody tells me something that they're doing, I tell them, I say it all the time. I pass it along because it's important. But, it's also this thing where we also need organizations and community that are based on community rather than spokespeople, rather than having the prominent people say, this is what my community does. It's like, I want people to go into the community and actually talk to these people so that I can see what they're doing, what they're accomplishing, and not have it be told by necessarily like a celebrity or a personality. I want to hear it from those people, because that's the thing that I think hurts so much when we come into voting season, right? Whenever there's an election year, that's everybody says, oh, but the celebrities and blah, 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 and all that. Like, there's such a mistrust on them that we forget. It's like, well, why do you as an accountant get to have an opinion, but not this actor, right? And again, it goes back to showing you that we only believe what we see. So everybody thinks that everybody in Hollywood is rich and famous, but most of my friends are blue collar workers that are kind of the black sheep in the family because they went out to try something that's so different from what they're doing. But it's also about being able to tell ourselves what we do. Like, I have no idea. There's so much history to know. There's so much history to learn that you have to become involved at any level, you know? And I always tell this story, and I kind of butcher it every time I tell it. But like Dolores is my mentor, and we work together on a lot of stuff. And she always talks about how this woman who barely spoke English, Spanish, she was fluent in Spanish, predominant language, ran for school board outside of Bakersfield. And she won the race. And it was like, you know, she won, and everybody's like, it's school board, like, who cares, right? Well, she won, and her Spanish-speaking self found out all of this corruption that was happening in the school board. And she brought it to light, and all of them got removed, right? And Dolores tells the example of how, like, even at one of the spots, like one of the positions, like, that people don't think about, you can make change once you know it. And when she told me that, I'm like, oh, I'm telling that story to everybody, you know? But especially right now, we live in a tech-savvy time. We should be using tech, not AI. We should be using tech to share our stories, because the gatekeeping doesn't exist like it used to anymore. I started out with gatekeeping. I was told what I could do and what I couldn't do, and now I don't need those guys.
Thank you. We'll take our last question.
Cristela, hi. My name is Dr. Judith Canales.
Ooh, stop bragging.
Not bragging. It happened right here in San Antonio, Texas, where I received my doctorate from Our Lady of the Lake University. Very proud of it.
I love it.
Very proud alum. I'm so pleased to see you, and of course, our Congressman, Joaquin Castro. And you were starting to touch upon this about the timing. And I want to turn this back to the, you were going for it here regarding politics. Here in Texas, we've been out in the woods for about over 30 years in the sense of not having had a statewide elected official that is a Democrat.
Yes.
Okay? And so where I'm going with this is, you are traveling around the United States. What are you seeing? What are you seeing regarding the Rio Grande Valley and where you're coming, your roots, and in the sense of being able to make this big change, and the fact that Latinos had such a strong influence on this midterm.
Yeah.
It's happening right now. Tell us what you're seeing, and also, where do you see yourself in the sense of politics? Thank you.
You know, thank you. You know, here's a couple of things. I can tell you that from the Rio Grande Valley, just in general, and this goes from like Democrats, like, you know, goes from across the country. What I see is that we need to play the game that they're playing, the Republicans. And what do I mean by that? We need to be more obvious with the fact that we love the country and that we are patriotic ourselves. I had this argument during the Women's March in 2016, where it was like, the Republicans do a great job of playing Amazing Grace before the show, you know, like, you know, every God bless America and everything. And a lot of Democrats just naturally assume that everybody knows that we love this country, you know, but we need to show it, because a lot of people don't. they don't assume, you know? And I mean, when we go back to the 90s, it was Pat Buchanan that really started this narrative that like both parties are bad, right? Both parties are bad. And they were saying that because the Republicans weren't doing great. And they thought if we throw both parties under the bus, then we actually disenfranchise a lot of voters and people don't want to show up and fight. So what we need to do right now, in the past couple of years, the Republican Party started infiltrating churches in Rio Grande Valley, and they started using Catholicism and religion to try to turn them into Republican voters. And it worked. Because a lot of Latinos, a lot of Mexicans that I grew up with are conservative when it comes to social issues, you know? And all they know is that if they're following that and the Republicans are going into these churches and saying, well, that's what the Republicans do, it's like, wow, this is what I do. I love God and I love the country and I love everything. So this is what we have to do. We have to show that we love this country. We have to be as patriotic as them. And we have to beat them at their own game when it comes to that. But also, what we have to do is actually try to, and this is hard, there's a lot of people in my neighborhood in the Rio Grande Valley that thought they're one of the good ones. Yes. And that's an argument that we have to come to Jesus with, is that there is no good ones. Like, that's the reason that like I try to connect it with like a sundown town, right? When in sundown towns, people don't care who you voted for. They care what skin you have. And after the sun sets, you're not welcome in certain towns. Even touring, there were a couple cities little towns that I did, college towns, where the colleges would tell me, you were great, but you need to leave town. And like they were cool, but the town wasn't. So like they're warning me, they're like, we had a great time, but you have to leave because for safety reasons, you're not gonna do well here. And this is just in the past 10, 15 years, so it's a new problem, right? Like it's one of those things that we have to talk about. But that's the problem that we have, is that when we share our stories, people don't wanna believe us because they don't wanna believe that this country isn't beautiful and 100% loving and everything. And, you know, it's like proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. Like everybody wants those verses to be true, but it's not. It's not for everybody. But that's why, to me, those opinions value the most, because even in a time where you live in a country where your people are struggling, you still love this fucking country. You know, and that's how much you love this country, that even when you are at the bottom or they're trying to keep you at the bottom, you tell them, I still love this country. I still do. And when it comes to politics, I've always said, it's like, I love being involved in politics. I have always been supportive. The people that I support with all my heart. You know, people always, especially in the past couple elections, I'll say, you know, I always tell them, unfortunately, this country has been built to a point where vanity votes don't work. Like, you can't, I know that you want to feel good about yourself and like vote with your conscience and vote for like Jill Stein or whatever. You know what I mean? But whether you like it or not, election day is going to come. Whether you vote or not, Wednesday's going to happen, the day after the election, and we need to show up. So we need to be really smart with how we vote. We need to make sure that we take people in our community to the polls if they want to show up. Souls to the polls, Black community. I always say in the Democrats, listen to Black women. The Black women will tell you exactly what the future of the Democratic Party is. And I've always said that I know we have not, every time we talk about Democrats in Texas, we show that clip of Ann Richards. Like, you know, and I think that we are at a point where now one of the best things to happen to this country in a weird way was Trump, because it made us show what happens when a party implodes, because they're focused on the now rather than the long-term building of any kind of community. So I think that he showed us what they were. When you succumb and say yes to everything that they say, there is nowhere else to go. And that is where we are now. Politically, I would love at some point. I always said that if I ever wanted to run for office, I would come back to the Valley or in Texas somewhere and run for office here, because I believe in Texas and I believe that it can change and go back to what path we were on back in the 90s.
Thank you.
Well, she was recently by the mayor at one of her shows, made an honorary San Antonian.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
you're always welcome in San
Yes.
Antonio. Thank you for coming back to be with
Not
us.
in the summer, but I'll be back.
Cristela Alonso.
Thank you so much. That was just awesome. It's going to be really, really awkward when I see Julian Castro again. All right, please welcome the woman who is responsible for this gathering and all day tomorrow, Sarah Gould, who is the executive director of MACRI.
Thank you so much, Elaine. How about a round of applause for our MC? What a treat to open this year's MACRI Symposium with Congressman Joaquin Castro and Cristela Alonso, two people whose work increases the visibility of Mexican-American civil rights issues. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Today is a special day for MACRI. Today is the 7th anniversary of our incorporation. Our existence would not be possible without the support of many members of our community, from elected officials to sponsors and funders, from our board members to our volunteers. So many in our community understand that there's so much more to know about our nation's history and how we got to where we are today. I would like to ask if any of our board members are in the room, if you could stand up and be acknowledged. I also hope that you'll take note of the sponsors that are listed in your program and on the slides that you saw earlier today. Those are people who are making a difference in our community, so we really do thank them. We were founded in 2019 to document and share Mexican-American civil rights history. And we do that year-round through programming and the creation of traveling exhibits. But this annual symposium is a gathering of national thought leaders who can help us understand what's happening with Mexican-American civil rights right now in this time, because we know that the pursuit of a more perfect union is not something that only exists in the past. It is ongoing, and it is something that we can all play a role in, especially this year, in the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States. What does the founding of the U.S. mean to us Mexican Americans? When you join us tomorrow for day 2 of this symposium, you will hear from people who work directly on civil rights matters, as well as some whose work helps us understand who we are as a community and why our contributions to this nation matter. It's going to be a great day, and I look forward to seeing you back. Back to you, Elaine.
Thank you so much for joining us for the opening night of the Mexican American Civil Rights Institute's 2026 Symposium, here in the Malu and Carlos Alvarez Theater at Texas Public Radio. To all of you joining us live stream, thank you too. We hope to see you tomorrow when the doors open at 9 a.m. Central Time to our in-person audience. Our opening remarks begin at 10 Central, and we want to see you tomorrow. Please come back. Que pasen muy buenas noches.